Hi, everyone. Today we're going to do something a little different. Recently, I've been watching a masterclass series that Paul Krugman has been doing. If you're unfamiliar with him, he is one of the top economists for
Economist.
and so anyways, he put out a masterclass series on economy and finance, and I have started the series. He talks about something that I found to be kind of interesting and challenge some of the ideas I have about inflation versus deflation. So he has this case study of a co-op for babysitting in Capitol Hill. The idea behind it, for those who don't know, is that there was a co-op of individuals who had children at home and wanted to participate in a way to babysit for one another without having to pay for the services. So they created coupons. Each coupon was equivalent to 1 hour of babysitting. And then the co-op distributed them to the families that were going to participate. They could then use or accrue coupons based on their babysitting needs. And the idea was that everyone can take turns watching children. Oftentimes, every family would want to keep some reserve of the currency because they wanted to be able to have a few special occasions, especially it seems like at certain times of the year, people would all want to have a surplus of currency that they could then use for the most important events. And ultimately, because of this use or disuse of these coupons, there would oftentimes be a decrease in the circulation. Because less coupons were being circulated, so you had a lot of people who were willing to help babysit other people's children, and very few people willing to have their children babysat. It seems sort of opposite of what you would have expected. But the whole point of this example is that by increasing the number of coupons quite significantly, once every couple had what they felt was a comfortable reserve of coupons that they could then use when they needed, they were then much more liberal with spending their extra coupons for babysitting. And the whole system was like lubricated by this to flow and transact in a much higher frequency. And this entire model has led a lot of economists to believe that increasing currency helps stimulate the economy in a way that contraction of currency or deflation would hurt the economy and sometimes cause a recession. So I don't know, Michael, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. The first being that a lot of economists make extrapolation errors or extrapolation fallacies. So they'll take a certain set of given conditions, such as this experiment you mentioned, and then broadly assume that it applies to the entire United States economy or the entire global economy or even just the entire economy of the Washington, D.C. area. And those kinds of extrapolations rely upon untested assumptions, often unquestioned assumptions, which is a recurring theme in books written by real economists or serious economists such as Thomas Sowell, who point out exactly that you can't have untested assumptions. One untested assumption would be that the exact types of behaviors you'd see in co-ops, parenting babysitting co-op would apply to other things in the economy, such as the accumulation of food or ammunition or stores of meat or whatever else. That's a false assumption. Likewise, there seems to be a divisibility problem with currency. It sounds like from your model, and maybe you can clarify this if I'm wrong in my understanding, but it sounds like in your model these coupons were each divisible, but there's a different time value of when they could be more useful. So an hour of babysitting on January 1st or December 31st of the year might be more interesting to most people than an hour of babysitting on March 13th. Just as one example. If that system, that co-op system allowed for people to trade multiple shifts or multiple fractions of shifts, so for example, 8 hours on December 31st or 4 hours on March 13th, then at least you have the visibility problem that you've solved. If that system doesn't allow for that, then you immediately have a big problem that it's not really a functioning currency if you don't have the ability to subdivide it.
Maybe there's some social stigma to doing that within this structure because they are units based on 1 hour of babysitting, and so therefore maybe there was some sort of pressure, to not price cut
Maybe, I don't know. In real functioning economies, there are always background social pressures, but usually they don't usurp or they don't take over economic realities. The economic realities always prevail. I'll ask you a really quick question. But what is, in your mind, the takeaway from this, and what should people be understanding from this? What do you want me to hear from this Krugman lecture you listened to?
Yeah, I think that the argument that inflation and inflationary pressures of about 2% a year are really healthy to stimulate the economy, in part because an increase in the circulation of currency, they believe, stimulates transactions and spending, which is good for the economy. And also that there's some psychological component that if you are getting a wage increase every year, or at least a static wage rather than decreasing wages because of deflationary pressure, there's a psychological component to that that makes people feel wealthier and therefore less likely to change their behavior in a way that hurts the economy. So less likely.
Hoarding, you mean, or discouraging spending?
Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Well, that's how they put it in the 1930s. Whenever the federal government screws something up and needs to steal or confiscate from the American people, they call everybody who has wealth hoarders. That's usually how they go. But there's an interesting curveball I want to throw your way, and that's this. I noticed in the example that the people directly involved in transacting currency were able to mint their own currency. Now, the exact corollary to that is not that a government should mint a currency, but that private individuals, private refiners, private goldsmiths, silversmiths, whatever, should be able to mint currency themselves privately. Now, the proper role of government in seigniorage or the mintage of coinage is to ensure against counterfeit, right? But in also taking that role, they've also implicitly always taken the role of determining how much currency or how much money there should be in terms of gold and silver specifically, or copper, any kind of metals. My opinion, or my suspicion, is that private mints can do just as effective of a job, and probably more effective of a job. Free markets can themselves determine what amounts of currency there can be based on their different habits of hoarding. And this can specifically be done if there's a seigniorage or a mintage fee. Let's say you think there's not enough currency in the system, you'd like to have some more. All right, you can go buy metals on a free market basis. You can submit them to a government to be minted, pay maybe a 3-5% cost for the mintage so that those metals then become money. And then if it was legal to melt down metals, the reverse could happen too. Free market forces could properly determine how much money there should be in the system based on individual needs taken together as an aggregate force. I don't understand how we go from a leap of there might be more money in the system and there's a target 2% inflation rate. How we come from that, even if that's true, to, okay, now there should be not only a central mint that determines how much currency there should be. That is in the U.S. Constitution, I acknowledge that. But then secondarily, that an unconstitutional organization, which is basically a banker cartel, should then have the authority to determine how much money there should be or should not be. And I say money loosely, how much currency there should be in the currency supply.
But you said it would be an aggregate demand that they're trying to assess. So wouldn't that kind of need to be a centralized agency that's doing that?
I certainly don't think so. I think 350 or so million American people can better assess in aggregate. They have more intelligence, more knowledge, more understanding in aggregate, again, of the economy than 10 central bankers can, or 100 central bankers can, or even 1,000, or even 10,000, regardless of their amount of education.
I mean, I do agree, like in a general sense, you never see central planning work very effectively compared to individuals, transacting.
Well, again, even in this co-op example, the people who are transacting have the ability of seniors. They have minting capacity or printing capacity for these coupons. Yeah. So the private participants in the system, in Krugman's own example, in this much touted example that's supposed to support central banking, I suppose, and all the chicanery that goes on with the U.S. Treasury, that very argument that's supposed to be in support of it has private mintage, private seniorage. It's not public, from what you told me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, if anything, Krugman's argument should be that there should be only free market solutions for money and minting, and perhaps that the only government authority should be to prevent counterfeited fraud, but not to determine the quantity of money.
That's interesting. If you have static wages and inflation of 4, or let's say like last year, 6, 7, 8%, you're really experiencing real wage losses. It just
Right.
doesn't feel the same as if we had a deflation of 1% and you had wage cuts of 1%. Your effective wealth is actually maintained there, even if your wages go down 1% with deflation of 1%. But it's all, I think it's very mental, and I wonder if as a society we can even change that in a way that wouldn't hurt the economy to go into like a more deflationary.
Well, tell us what you think. Would you rather have a deflationary environment of 1% where your wages go down 1%, or would you rather have an inflationary environment of 2%, 10% where your wages go up 6%?
Yeah.
Tell us.
Or if you would rather have a private mintage and a decentralized bank or a centralized bank, which do you think you prefer?
Do you think we should do a Kickstarter? We can call it the Michael and Alexis Mint.
Okay, stay tuned for that, but I think that's all for now.
All right.